opportunity to come and have a presentation on risk management. I'm so excited about it. So without further ado, I'll be start talking about risk management. If you have any questions, you may please type it out so that Mr. Rao can ask me at the end of the session. So before we get to the risk management, a little about PMI. PMI has today more than 4,25,000 members in 187 countries, and there are more than 20,000 members in India, coming from all the fields of not only IT but manufacturing, supply chain, energy, etc., etc. Globally, there are 260 chapters, and 8 of them are in India. Mr. Rao, I did not check if I'm audible and my speed is okay. People are able to understand it over the internet. Please interrupt me if you feel otherwise. PMI is a non-profit organization which is involved in advancing the project management profession since 1969. It has published multiple books and other publications, which includes 13 global standards around risk management, schedule management, program management, portfolio management, and the premier standard out of all this is the PMBOK guide, that is the project management body of knowledge, whereby over 3 million copies are in circulation. PMI offers various credentials, out of which 6 are very much recognized by different businesses, governments, and NGOs, and there are around 5.6 lakhs credential holders, out of which 30,000 are in India. This is a list of all the credentials, starting from top, which is the signature credential for PMI. It's called PMP, Project Management Professional. It demonstrates the knowledge and skill in leading and directing project teams and in delivering project results within the constraints of schedule, budget, and resources. It was introduced in 1984 and it is recognized and transferable worldwide. It is credited by ANSI against the globally recognized ISO IEC 17024 standard. As of June 2011, there are 4.3 lakhs PMPs worldwide. The CAPM standard is very similar to PMP standard. However, it is for those professionals who do not have required 5 years of project management experience. So a lot of students and junior professionals go for CAPM standard before they acquire PMP standard. PGMP, which is the next standard, which is Program Management Professional Standard, that is utilized by professionals who have more than 5 years of experience and they manage bigger programs. And a program is defined as multiple projects rolling up into a program. The next one is the RMP standard, which is Risk Management Professional, then Schedule Professional, and ACP standards. So these are all worldwide standards which are recognized by different governments and businesses across the world. So before I get into real risk management, I would like to present this slide in front of you and to trigger some thoughts. If you remember, there was a Hurricane Katrina in United States where more than 2.5 lakhs homes were destroyed and more than 1,000 people were killed. Sometimes we wonder if risk management was implemented, would things have been different? Some of you might be aware of the Chrysler Corporation story. When they introduced this model PT Cruiser in 2000, there were so many bookings or advanced bookings for this car that the dealers had to turn the customers away. I wish there was a better risk management plan. And we see these stories in our day-to-day life, even in our small day-to-day work activities. For example, going to office from home or coming home from office, we unknowingly or knowingly manage risks. So a little bit to bring humor here from our famous management cartoonist Dilbert. I'll just let you read and laugh at it. One of the famous philosophers from Greece, Marcus, said every systematic development of any subject ought to begin with a definition so that everyone may understand what the discussion is about. So with this context, let's little bit define what is risk management. As I was talking, we do risk management in our day-to-day activities as well as in our professional settings, in our personal settings, everywhere. So what is a risk? Risks are nothing but uncertainties. The future, we are not able to determine how the future would be, or even if we try to estimate the future, we always have certain uncertainties built into it. These uncertainties give birth to risks, and these risks impact the objectives of the project. The project objectives could be seen from multiple angles. They could be seen from delivering on time, on budget, and with the quality which is asked by a customer, could be seen as a project objective. Delivering what the customer is looking for from the project could also be seen as a project objective. So these uncertainties about future, both positive and negative uncertainties, introduce risks. The graph shows a report from Standish, which is very much famous for doing research and surveys. If you see from the graph, more number of projects either were failed or challenged as compared to the projects which were successful. And why does this happen? Why do more projects fail? It is not because of the lack of project management standards, practices, or tools. I also believe that we have skilled, capable, and talented people to run the projects. It seems one of the reasons for the project failures is occurrences of unforeseen events which disrupt the smooth journey of the project and cause irreversible deviation from the project plan. These occurrences of unforeseen events are called risks. Once the press asked one of the British Prime Minister, Mr. Harold Macmillan, what could most likely throw government off course? And his answers was, events, my dear, events. Of all the events on these projects, some of the unforeseen events are really unforeseeable, and we call them unknown unknowns, while some were foreseeable. These are called as known unknowns. These would have been managed well if someone in the project knew where to look for and what to look for. These are called as risks. So what brings risks to the projects? There are primarily three sources of risks to the projects. The first one is the common characteristics of the projects. These common characteristics are already built into the project, and these cannot be removed without really changing the project. For example, the uniqueness of the project. Even the PMI defines project is a unique and temporary endeavor which produces a defined output. The complexity of the project, the assumptions, the constraints, the people, stakeholders, change, etc. These are all common characteristics of the projects which introduce risk to the project. The second category of the risks are which are deliberate by design. So as we all know that the projects help the organization realize its strategy. This can be done either through incremental changes or through revolutionary projects. The incremental projects give incremental benefits and may not be suitable for all situations. The revolutionary projects are suitable for paradigm changes, trying to leapfrog the competition. Thus, we all know this, the higher the risks, the better the rewards. So, revolutionary projects may introduce more risk to the projects, in turn giving more benefits to the organization when these projects are successful. And then external environment, how can we ignore that? The market volatility, the competition in the market, the changes to the client organization, and our own internal organizational changes or structure which introduce risks to the projects. So we see that the projects are risky due to different reasons. The question is it possible to imagine a project without risk? And the answer is of course not, as you would have seen from the three categories on the previous slide. There will be some high-risk projects and there will be some low-risk projects. In my opinion, zero-risk project is an oxymoron, as
Ladies and gentlemen, I am sorry for the interruption. There seems to be a slight technical hitch, and we will be back in another, say a couple of minutes. Extremely sorry for the inconvenience, and please bear with us. So, we'll be back shortly. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll be back in a few moments from now. I'll request you all to please be logged in. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to um, have another slightly lengthier pause here, like it will be taking another 5 to 10 minutes easily, because the system is being actually restarted over there of the faculty. So I'll request you to please be online and please cooperate. Thank you so much. We will be extending the session accordingly. Thank you once again.
Yeah, Mr. Rao, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Agarwal, we can hear you,
Hello.
and yeah, we can hear you, and we can restart. Thank you.
Okay. Can you see my screen also?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So I'm sorry for this. I think I forgot to take care of this risk, and that means the computer can go down, and there was a risk anyway. So I appreciate your patience. You're waiting for the technical issues to get resolved. So I guess we can get started. Um, so we were talking about can there be a project without risk, and the conclusion I was drawing was, of course, there will be some projects which will have high risks and hence high returns, or there would be some projects which would be low risk and hence low returns. And primarily zero risk project is an oxymoron, as you can see. Mr. Rao, I just wanted to quickly check. You can see the presenter view of the slides, or is is you are able to see only? I have a different view of the slides.
Actually, Mr. Agarwal, I am able to look at the slide which says why manage risks, and there is a graph here: extreme, high, moderate, low. Is that correct? And on the
Yes.
right side, I am also able to look at an image which says keep risk out. Manage risk.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it is only I mean it's partially visible now. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Just give me 1 minute. How still you are able to see two slides or only one slide?
No, I am not able to look at only one slide, but the display of the next slide is also coming on the right side.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let me then go
So
back to my old one.
uh,
Okay. Okay, then now it is better, right? Now you can see only the.
no. Now we are able to look at the notes pages.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
I think you will have to take a resume slideshow, please.
No, I do that. This is a Windows 8 and
So
just a minute. Let me do this.
yeah.
Okay, now you are good.
Yeah, it's better now. This is the correct one.
This is the correct one, right? Right. Okay, so the next question arises is, should we keep the risk out or should we manage the risks? I think the important thing is to manage the risks in a manner that risks are at the acceptable level of the sponsoring organization. Essentially, those who are involved in sponsoring, initiating and managing the projects in an organization should welcome risks, and because the risks foster creativity, innovation and change as long as they are taken sensibly, intelligently, appropriately, and they are managed effectively. There are uncertainties that matter as their occurrence would hinder achievement of project objectives. That's what generally we think about. However, there are also uncertainties that matter as their occurrence would help achieve those objectives. So with this, we come to the definitions of what is a project risk. Project risk is an uncertain event or condition that occurs and has a positive or negative impact on the project's objective. So when we are talking about risk, we should be looking at both positive and negative. And what is a project risk management? It includes the processes concerned with conducting risk management planning, identification, analysis, responses, and monitoring and control on a project. So if I may submit that project risk management is a full life cycle in itself, like project management, which starts with planning, scheduling or identification, analysis, response, monitor and control. And the objectives of risk management is to increase the probability and impact of positive events and decrease the probability and impact of negative events in the project. So having understood the project risk management, having understood the project risks, let's look at the project risk management. Before we actually get really deep into the project risk management, what would make the organization successful as far as the risk management is concerned? From my experience, the biggest thing comes here is the organizational culture. Are we promoting healthy risk management within the organization, or are we promoting watermelon dashboards kind of a culture in the organization? What are watermelon dashboards? So if you visualize, watermelon is green from outside but red from inside. And we have seen in the industries, including Ford Motor industry, for example, the executives would come to the board meetings with everything green on their charts and status reports, while the company was still not doing well and losing billions of dollars per year in their operational costs. That is called as watermelon. Internally, it was red, but the organizational culture did not support a healthy risk management and a discussion around risks or issues. So if that's the kind of organizational culture, then obviously not only your organization, which would fail in delivering the project and meeting its objectives, but the client organization for which you are delivering the projects, both of them would probably go towards the direction which we do not want them to go. The second is organizational commitment. Yes, I have a culture, but then do I have a commitment? Is my organization really giving resources, both in terms of time and money, to do risk management? Am I able to go and put risk management effort on the project plan? Is very, very important. Or are people told, hey, don't worry about the risk management, just go and continue to execute? The third is the individual commitment and responsibility. One important aspect of risk management is that risk management is not only the project manager's job. It is the job of everybody and anybody on the project. So am I taking that as my individual commitment and responsibility? It is very similar to saying the quality is everybody's job, or the security in office is everybody's job. Similarly, risk management is everybody's job. Fourthly is open and honest communication. It actually ties back to the organizational culture. Are we, do we have opportunities? Does my senior management allow me to openly and honestly communicate about the risks? Or am I being somebody who always thinks negatively as part of the project team? Scaling risk effort to the project is another important aspect. Is as the project size grows or the complexity of the project grows, the time and the effort being spent on the risk management would also grow. $1 million project would need an equal amount of or similar amount of time and effort on the risk management appropriately. A small project would need smaller time and effort on the risk management. We have already talked about the communication. The last but not the least is recognizing it as an iterative process. Risk management is not a process which begins at the beginning of the project and then it stays there. Risk management is a process which goes through the life cycle of the project, and you would see during the life cycle of the project, you start with the identification, analysis, etc., etc. So it goes in an iterative manner. Now, the risk management process itself may be remembered through this acronym called PRC. There are 5 big stages here. Plan. How do you plan for risk management? When does it start? When does it finish? We will see each of these stages in detail. Identify. You start identifying the risks within the organization or within your projects. You evaluate both qualitatively and quantitatively, and you prioritize the risks and take response planning is the taking actions on the risks or being prepared for the risks, and then controlling and monitoring the risks. Now this is an old diagram, but I like it very much because it tells me that the risk management process, which is in the middle, you can see a straight bar in the middle: risk management, planning, identification, qualitative analysis, quantitative analysis, etc. It integrates with lot of other project management processes, and it also takes inputs from external factors, organizational processes, change control, etc., etc. So the risk management planning is, or the risk management process itself is tightly integrated with the project management processes. So let's look at the first step in risk management planning, which is called risk management planning. This diagram is from PMBOK, the 5th edition, and it talks about the 11.1, the plan risk management. The inputs which it receives is from the project charter, from the project management plan, from the stakeholders, and from the enterprises or organization. And the output it creates, it feeds to the next processes, which is identifying risks, perform qualitative risk analysis, quantitative risk analysis, and perform or plan risk responses. So this is a very, very critical step in project risk management because it feeds into the next 4 sub-processes in project risk management. I belong to a company called Microsoft, and in Microsoft we have our own IT development life cycle, and we have mapped the project risk management to the processes to IT life cycle, which are, you could see in the as a horizontal bar: risk management, planning, identification, etc., etc. And we have mapped our activities to inputs and outputs to each of the PMI given risk management sub-processes. So I thought I will share this with you as an example of that you could look at your organizational processes and map them to the standards of risk management as published by PMI. So when we are talking about risk management planning, what are some of the things which we have to keep into consideration? The first one is methodology. What approach you will use to manage the risk? What tools and data you would leverage to manage the risk? Would you consider a risk breakdown structure? And we'll talk about the risk breakdown structure in a while. Who is responsible for it? Who is going to support the risk management planning? How much time and money in terms of budgeting and timings we are going to spend on it? What are the various categories of the risks? We'll spend some time on looking at the categories. How would you measure the risk? What is the definition of the probability? The impact. How would you look at the exposures of the risks? And then if you remember from my previous slides, I said stakeholder management gives input to the risk management planning. So who are my stakeholders and what are their tolerance levels? Do I have stakeholders who would say it's okay if you're 10% over budget, I don't see as a risk to the project? Or do you have stakeholders who need to be communicated even if you are 1% over budget or under budget? It goes both ways. How would you report out the risks? When will you report out? Would you do a weekly report, email, or would you publish a hard copy report? How will you track the risks? How often the project team will meet, etc., etc. So these are some of the things which go into risk management planning. And the reason we need to spend a lot of time in risk management planning as we spend a lot of time in project management planning is because one is it documents and standardizes your approach. It brings everybody on the same page. It brings buy-in from the rest of the project team. It does not just remain the headache of a project manager to manage the risks. Everybody starts working like a team to manage the risks. And it highlights the risk management efforts. You can get sponsorship on the resources, on the budget and the timing from your senior management on the risk management aspect. So when we are done with the risk management planning, one important aspect you would get is the risk breakdown structure, which is basically the hierarchical breakout of potential risks by category. So for example, you could say, I would identify the risks under technology, and then you break them down to say technology could be Windows, it could be related to, it could be related to IT, it could be related to the air conditioning, it could be related to other things. And then within IT, you could again break it down to say it could be related to the hardware, it could be related to software. Within hardware, you could break it down to say it's the PC and laptops, etc. It's the network and the entire gadgets along with the networking devices, etc., etc. So that kind of gives you the risk breakdown structure. Similarly, you do for dependencies, you do for people, data, lines of business, and so on and so forth. And these are just possible examples to trigger the thoughts. Depending upon the area in which the project is, the scope of the project, the duration, and especially the size of the project, you would have to look for the examples of the categories by which you are going to create your RBS, risk breakdown structure. So these are the things which I was talking about, some of the drilling deep in each of the possible categories. Now this is in summary my risk management plan. This is what we follow in the subdivision in which I work. How would we do risk management, team-based risk management approach? Like if you see the methodology, we would submit risks, the triage would happen with the program manager, the decision stage would come, then we assign it to the risk owner. So entire workflow is given here. The PM owns the risk management in this case. Important thing I would like to draw your attention to is the definitions. So we will have a 5-point scale on the probability. We'll have a 5-point scale for the impact. So for example, a risk that the computer will shut down during webinar, the probability was low, I could say 1, but the impact is 5 because the webinar would have to stop. So the exposure would be 1 into 5, which is 5. Now you could probably rank and stack using the probability, impact, and the exposure. And then the stakeholder tolerances, report formats, how would you publish the risks? So we are saying we'll use the SharePoint to publish the risks and so on and so forth. So with this, we move on to the next step. Having done the risk management planning, let's go to identification and evaluation of the risks. You see that the risk identification is a big process area as far as the PMI talks about it. You see in the diagram on the left hand side, create WBS, which is work breakdown structure. Next one is scheduling 6.1, 6.5. Next one is cost management 7.1, 7.2. Next one is quality 8.1. Next one is human resources, which is people. Then 12.1 is procurement, which is sourcing. 13.1 is stakeholders, and so on and so forth. So these are all the sub-processes or other knowledge areas as far as the project management is concerned, which give inputs for risk identification. The other way of doing it is you could look at your project life cycle. So being from the IT industry, I would say if I'm running an IT waterfall kind of a project which says initiate, get the requirements, do the design, do the coding, testing, and then implementation, I could look at the risks from each of these life cycles. You could use both approaches. You could use one approach over the other depending upon, again, your comfort level and what are the standards being followed in the organization. And similarly, during risk management planning, I showed you how Microsoft's risk management processes are mapped to PMI. Similarly, I have identification and the evaluation processes mapped to the PMI. Now, once we know where to look for the risks, the next question is how do I look for the risks? Now, there are various ways to look for the risks. One is to review the key documentation. For example, charter, the VisionScope, requirements, functional specs, etc., etc. You could create a checklist and you could run all your projects through the checklist. They will be able to identify some risks for you. You could look at the assumptions in the projects, and assumptions can give you lots of risks. There could be, we could use diagramming techniques like cause and effect or fishbone diagrams. We could use flow charts to look for the risks. If some of you have Six Sigma background, you could look, you might have prepared a FMEA, failure modes, effects and analysis document, which helps you identify and capture the risks. There is nothing better than brainstorming or interviews or Delphi technique, especially brainstorming, the project team coming together and brainstorming on the risks. It takes time, but you can get the expert views, you can get multiple people identifying risks from various areas. And for certain projects, if they are bigger in size, we generally do SWOT analysis, or for departments, we do SWOT analysis. You could look at the risks coming out of those. You could go to an expert and ask for the risks. For example, if you are installing a big electrification system somewhere, you know whom to contact. You could ask for the risk. And there are many other ways to look for the risks. And once you have looked for the risks, obviously you need a place to capture the risks. This place is called as risk register. It could be a simple Microsoft Excel. It could be a paper-based register, or it could be a tool, a project management tool or a program management tool, whereby you could capture the risks. Now, some of the fields in the risk register are very obvious. ID, type, author, identified by the date in which was opened, title, management phase. This refers to the phase of the project management, in which phase we identified the risk. Next, action owner. It is very, very important that we put the owner of the risk in the risk register so that we can follow up, and that way we have a buy-in from people to go and do response planning of the risks. The state of the risk. Now, as everything, the risks also go through its life cycle. Now, this is an example life cycle, and you could do your own internal life cycle in the organization. So, for example, pending triage, that means somebody has just captured the risk, but it has yet not been talked about. Watch, that means the risk is critical and it is on the watch list, because let's say there are 100 or 200 risks in the risk register. We are not expecting that you would be able to focus on all 100 or 200 risks. So you need a shorter or a smaller list to watch. Research. Somebody just put in the risk over there, but it needs more information. So you put that risk as a research risk. Active, that means the triage team has already met and the risk is actively being managed. Rejected, we think it is irrelevant, but still, why it is important to keep the irrelevant risks in the risk register? Why not you just delete them? Because when you are revisiting, let's say after a month or a quarter, depending upon the size or the duration of the project, you may just say, hey, look, now this risk has become more relevant. Right? So the trigger, that means the risk has already been triggered. Now I need to really look for the risk mitigation plan. I need to put something in action. And the risk which is closed, that means risk owner has accepted that risk can be closed. Whatever mitigation plan was supposed to be put in place has been put in place. And so on and so forth. So you must also put the cause or the what could cause the risk, what will be the consequences of the risk. So once you have a good risk register, now what do you do with it? Obviously, important thing is to prioritize the risks in the risk registers. And how do you prioritize? You need a qualitative method and a quantitative method. The qualitative method is it takes input from work breakdown structure, it takes input from the organizational standards and processes, and the quantitative method towards the bottom of the screen takes input from the schedule and the cost management. We'll look at both of them separately. Qualitative method is simple. You know the probability, you know the impact, you have already determined a scale for your organization on how would you measure the probability and how would you measure the impact. You could just multiply it and say, this is my exposure, and the risks which are having higher exposure are going to be on the watch list or are going to be actively managed. The risks which are lower exposure are going to be passively managed. Means they will be in the risk register, but I may not spend time working on them. That is qualitative method. And to do this probability and impact, you may just take input from various people, do a consensus or Delphi and agree upon it. And then we have the quantitative methods, whereby some modeling or simulation or expected monetary value and analysis could help you identify more quantitatively the impact of the risks, as well as help you prioritize the risks. So all these, the important aspect of doing risk identification and prioritization is that whatever is being taken as an output of these two steps, it should be captured in the risk register. We do not want to leave anything on the table verbally, assuming that yes, everybody's on the same page. Because as we said in the beginning, risk management is an iterative process, so we must constantly revisit what we have discussed. Okay, now I have the risks identified, I have the risks registered in the risk register, I have the risks prioritized. Now what should I do with them? The next step is to do the response planning, understand how I am going to react to the risks, as well as monitor and control them. Again, how Microsoft has mapped these two activities to their internal life cycle. So this is the graph again from PMBOK, which shows how the response planning takes inputs from the risk register as well as the risk management plan, and monitoring and controlling takes inputs from project management plan and work performance reports, how the project is progressing, etc., etc. Now, there could be multiple ways to respond to the risks. Obviously, whenever we talk about risks, the first thing which comes to our mind is the negative risks. So I'm going to first talk about the negative risks here, or what could be our response strategy for the negative risks. And then we'll talk about the positive risks. The first thing which comes to mind is avoid. There's a big cyclone which is expected on the coast of Andhra Pradesh. So the first risk response is avoid, as in evacuate that place. So that means you eliminate the threat by eliminating the cause. And in our day-to-day life or projects, this could means you eliminate that feature, you stop the work, or if there is a risk because of the, let's say, outsourcing, you have given that package of work to a third party, you just want to change the third party, so eliminate that. But that may not be possible in all the situations, as we all know. So then the next one is transfer, which is obviously, instead of me carrying a risk, I want to transfer the risks to somebody else, which is, for example, insurance. We do it for ourselves in our personal life. The accidental insurance, home insurance, health insurance, or even in the organizations. The buildings are insured, or the high-end machinery, the apparatus, they both are insured. So I'm transferring the risk to a third party which can handle it much better. The third is mitigate. Okay, neither I can avoid nor I can transfer. So what do? I mitigate the risk by establishing a plan B or a plan C to reduce the impact or probability. So for example, I'm erecting a building and I'm putting a cantilever. Now there is a risk that the strength of the cantilever is not good enough to hold the load for which it is being constructed. So what do? I need to figure out how do I strengthen the cantilever further. It may incur extra cost. It may impact the project by incurring extra time. But that's how I cannot break the cantilever. I cannot transfer it to third party. I have to figure out how do I mitigate it. The next strategy is accept. Do nothing. It's going to be risky. I know that, but that's what it is. And some of the big strategic projects which I was talking about, which are not incremental, but they are evolutionary projects. Like for example, Google launching the street cars in the city of New York to capture every street. There is a risk that somebody may sue Google for privacy laws, breaking of privacy laws, etc. But okay, we'll accept that risk and we'll go on. When they sue, then we'll figure out what to do. So these are the risks we just continue to go forward with. So it all depends upon the tolerance level of the stakeholders. are your stakeholders going to be okay with a do nothing kind of a approach, or they would like you to avoid or transfer or mitigate the risk. Now, when we talk about positive risks, then how do we manage that? One is exploit, which is a difference from avoid. So you say, how do I exploit the positive risk by developing a strategy which would get me much more benefits. Second is share, which is different from transfer. So I partner with somebody and I share the risk, the positive risk, and this will help me achieve the opportunity much better or sooner. So for example, when we talk about the collaboration between two organizations, that's basically the sharing of the risks. Then enhance, that means within the organization, what do you do to enhance the likelihood or the impact of the risk for something. So you see, in the next slide, you'll be able to see the summary of negative risks on the left-hand side, the positive risks on the right-hand side, and some of the examples for the negative risks. You remove activities or people for avoid, you go for insurance, or you do turnover projects for transfer, you do mitigation by trainings or prototyping or piloting. That is basically a mitigate, reduce the probability or impact. When it comes to the positive risks, you add people or activities, you explore more. When it comes to sharing, you invest or partner, acquire companies or partner with other companies. When it comes to enhancing, you give incentives to the people so that they work harder or better to get positive results or impact on the risks. And in the middle, it's a accept, do nothing, just continue assuming that your stakeholders are okay with the risks. At the bottom of the slide, you'll be able to see how a workflow would work. Start with a risk register, look at if the risk is a high exposure or it's on an urgent list. No, don't respond. Next one, confirm, assign the risk owner, develop a contingency plan, develop a fallback plan, and is the risk triggered? No. Then continue to monitor the status. If the risk is triggered, yes, then respond, and your response plan is you have already captured, so use that response plan to respond to the risk. Now, how do you know when to respond? That you do by looking at risk triggers. And what are those risk triggers? They help you identify when the risk is about to happen. The important aspect of a trigger is that it is about to happen. So for example, when we're talking about the cyclone, an example from cyclone, when the cyclone is about to happen, that means the low pressure area is developed, or you are seeing the reports from other parts of the world about strong winds, etc., then you'll say, okay, the risk is going to trigger, so I need to start working on my contingency plan. So what are some of the common triggers? Alignment, changes within the organization, financial triggers could be there, the quarterly results you see on the stock market could trigger some of the risks, the earned value management on the project. Is my schedule already 3% behind? Is my cost 2% overrun? Now you don't wait for the 5% to happen, which is your tolerance. That means the risk could be triggered. Technology risks. You are piloting a new technology, or you expected a delivery to happen for a machinery, but then there is a strike by the shipping companies or by the truckers. So that gives you a trigger for the risk. So when you are planning the risk responses, make sure a single risk needs to be planned for multiple consequences. It's not just one risk mapping to the one activity. One risk could map to the multiple activities in your WBS or a project plan. And also especially pay attention to the activities which are on the critical path, because you don't want the activities on the critical path to get impacted because of the risk triggering. Then plan for the residual risks. Now what are residual risks? These are not the risks which, these are the risks which will still remain after the risk response is implemented. So for example, one of your mitigation plan is to transfer the risk for a turnkey project or outsource it to another vendor. Now there is still a risk. Now the risk in terms of, now you have started a different kinds of risks that we will talk about later, which are called as secondary risk. But you still have a risk in terms of being accountable to deliver, to get the delivery done from the outsourcing partner on time and integrated with the mainstream project so that you can deliver the entire project on time. So for example, you are constructing a dam and you want the gates of the dam to be manufactured by somebody else. So you transfer the risks around manufacturing of the gates, but then you need to monitor that part of it, and you are accountable to make sure that the gates are delivered on time so that they can be integrated with the dam. And then there are secondary risks, which happens when you are when you look at the new risks arising because of your risk response. So for example, you may outsource to a company which is a startup company, for example, and now there are more risks. What happens if that company folds? What happens if that company is not able to hire the talent? What happens if that company is sold or acquired by somebody else? So then those risks starts up, and then you have to mitigating those risks also. And then how do you monitor and control the risks? So it all depends upon the complexity and the schedule of the project. You may want to do weekly meetings. You may want to assign ownership for status and updates. There are some words I'm using here, please ignore them. They are from the IT, which is Visual Studio or SharePoint. Risk register, as I said, could be a simple Excel, or it could be a hard copy register, or it could all depend upon your company's internal processes. How do you want to maintain that? So you may want to do a weekly meeting, or you may want to do telephonic calls, etc., to monitor and control the risks. Use a simple principle of KISS. Keep it simple and stupid. We don't want to keep the risk management process very complex, or risk monitoring and controlling process very complex. Right? Risk management metrics. You may want to bring up metrics, which is I'm going to show on the next slide, which will help you manage the risks better. So you may want to just plot a matrix like this. On the x-axis you can see low, medium, high impact, and on the y-axis you can see high, medium, low probability. Plot the risks in these 9 quadrants, and then this becomes your one dashboard or a heat map, and say, okay, what should I do? Should I be focusing on a risk number 3, which is turning red? That means my exposure is increasing. Or should I be focusing on risks number 1 and 4, where the exposure is static, and so on and so forth. We have used it for complex big projects, and we really find it healthy, especially for a project manager to keep this kind of a chart printed on a big paper, put it on his or her cubicle, and constantly update it and look at what areas the team should be focusing on with respect to the risk metrics. One important aspect which we have not talked about till now is managing issues. What are issues? The risks, when they mature, they become issues. That means, so for example, when I was delivering this webinar, I did not really take care of the risk that my computer could go down, so it became an issue. So what do I do when I have an issue at hand? Now, the treatment for issue is very different from the treatment for risks. So at Microsoft, we have also mapped or created a process for managing issue, and it is as simple as managing a problem at hand. So you need to really focus on managing the issue at hand first as part of your risk management, rather than focusing on the risks at that point of time. Obviously, the question could be, hey, look, what happens to the other risks? They could become issues. Yes. So the analogy I would take is like the analogy of a firefighter. If there is a fire, you need to first go and put off that fire. So if the risk has really become an issue, you need to go and take care of that. So you must address and follow through, be transparent, over communicate, log the issue and track it. One of the practice I would like to share is in the risk register, you may want to add a field to say type of risk/issue, and as soon as you see the risk getting converted to an issue or an issue being logged which was not previously tracked like a risk, you want to add it and make sure it is tracked. Make sure your stakeholders are party to the determining if the issue is resolved or not, and share the lessons learned. Very, very important, because you don't want other risks to become fires or issues and create a churn in the project. With this, we come to some closing thoughts. The various surveys and studies done by PMI suggest that solid risk management program increases success by 90%. So you must incorporate risk management into your projects and make sure enough sponsorship is there to provide time and resources to manage the risks. Remember the acronym P, C, and I. So now I stands for issues, which will help you go through this process smoothly. Manage risk from start to finish, or they will manage you and your project. As we saw in the beginning of the presentation, that projects cannot be without risks. The risks should be taken in terms of both positive and negative. So we need to make sure we manage risks from the beginning of the project till the end of the project. Otherwise, they will drive the project rather than project manager driving the project. I like this quote very much from Zen master Suzuki Roshi. He said, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. My humble suggestion to all of us on this call is to start managing risks as if we are starting all over again. We are beginners, so that we identify the risks all around us and make sure they become part of the project and they are documented and tracked. So make risk management part of your project. Start early. Do not wait for somebody to say, now it's time for us to do risk management. I would just, as soon as, if I'm a project manager, I get the project charter from my sponsor, I would immediately start looking for the risks with the help of project charter. Document, and then communicate. Very, very important. Do not ignore even a smaller risk like attrition in the team. We take it for granted that some people in the team may leave the project. It's important to register that risk. It is a separate thing. You may not do something about it, but at least have it documented. Over a period of time, we have seen organizations developing their own standard risk registers, which immediately give a jump start to the project manager to build custom risk register for a particular project. So let's say organization collect risks over a period of time. We have a database of 50 or 100 risks, and I'm starting a new project. I can just go to the database and pick up the risks which are pertaining to my project and then build on top of it. Consider both threats and opportunities. Have clear owners. In this world, unfortunately, nothing works until unless there's a clear ownership. So make sure you are making people accountable for individual risks. Prioritize. We cannot do anything without prioritizing the risk, because there could be so many risks which we have to manage. Last, I would like to close with the biggest risk to the project is the poor risk management. So do not ignore risk management. With this, we are at questions or thoughts.